Thanks, everyone. Megan DeSomery from EPAM Systems. It's still in that ballpark, but it's actually going to be 5 lessons that we've learned in enriching enterprise search. And if anyone was paying close attention to any of the placards and stuff that are out there for announcing this session, I am not Jitin Agarwal. So I realize if only if you were paying close attention would you even realize that. And so think of me as a Jitin 2.0 here. So what we're going to cover today, briefly, these are kind of the 5 topics that we're going to go into. And with 15 minutes, I'm not going to dwell too long here because we'll jump right into it. So before we get into the lessons, let's just take a quick step back for a second and think about, because I feel like the sessions before were really good lead-ups here to what's the typical, kind of search framework for enterprise search that we're talking about here. And this is certainly, kind of a little bit built on our opinion based on doing this with a lot of different clients. And I think we've covered pretty well that within the enterprise, we've got a lot of content, right? So if we start on the left and think about the sources for a minute and kind of work our way up, we have so much proprietary information, right? It's growing all the time. It's in different formats, a lot of unstructured data, of course. But if you think about taking that and actually layering other content on top of it, like proprietary, like premium content, right? Paid subscriptions, other data that you're consuming all the time that might be outside your enterprise, but still very, very relevant, right? It's still not kind of public sources, which is kind of the third category above, where now we've got tons and tons of other content out there, right? It's what we're all used to consuming. And so if we can couple all those, I guess it's not couple, but if we bring all those sources together, and then you kind of walk it through that framework where we're aggregating the data, right? So we're taking that, for us, we actually kind of pre-curate hundreds of thousands pieces of public data and especially kind of tie that into industry specifics, right? So you only care about certain journals if you're in life sciences or in healthcare or whatever. So being able to kind of bring that a little pre-curated and then apply the text analytics against that, right? And that's kind of where I think we've talked a lot about where the magic happens, right? Where we're able to understand through natural language processing and things like that, why that matters. Apply the tagging, maybe sentiment analysis if that's important to you, and then index that so we can process all of it and at the end of the day produce good search results. But it's not just search results. So if you think about the ways that you want to deliver that, it could be consuming it through a newsletter, right? It could be consuming it through an email alert, right? There's going to be different ways that we need to consume this data. And so not having it be a one-size-fits-all is kind of critically important. And so the case for this enterprise search, I probably don't need to make one for you, but a quick anecdote. I started my career, at the risk of dating myself, a while ago working on a very big HR transformation project for a large healthcare provider headquartered in California. And my part was kind of a small piece of this transformation, but we were bringing in a knowledge base, a personalized knowledge base to feed their call center and a little bit early employee self-service, which I know sounds very dated because who even says that anymore? It's just kind of obvious. But at the time, it was a big deal that we were going to provide a way for employees and call center agents to actually answer complicated benefits questions, right? Understanding what deductible they were going to have to pay if this, and this occurred to them, right? So it was this, kind of way to provide, and it had to be personalized because everyone's a little different, their region, et cetera. And it was actually a pretty good system. It had really great answers. It was personalized, but to get to the answers, you had to either really like to navigate via chapter, section, topic, FAQ, right, and be really good at kind of navigating that way, or you had to be very good with how you searched and knew exactly the right keywords, exactly the right spelling. You had to do everything the right way, and then maybe you'd get some very just list-based search results. Well, I would argue that if you fast forward, that was probably about 20 years ago, if you fast forward now, yes, we have synonyms and natural language processing and things that are making it so I don't have to know perfect keywords, but if you're honest with yourselves or think about your clients that you're trying to serve, how many people have really reached a place where within their enterprise they're getting to answers and insights very easily? It still feels like organizing that knowledge is that elusive red herring. So how do we get there? What are the lessons that we have learned? The first one is thinking about things from an insightful and kind of like a expert solution base, right? So it's not just about finding information quickly, which the core content and indexing and all of that does help us a lot. And finding information is still helpful, because who doesn't get frustrated, even in our personal lives when you're on Google and you put you think you've kind of mastered this search string and you get the results and it's not anything near what you wanted. So you tweak the search, right? You put in a different keyword, you remove this one, you realize you put global and you meant this, or whatever it might be. So finding information is still a good thing, but if we start talking about delivering insights and expert solutions, now we're talking about kind of more of discovery and finding information we didn't even know we needed. So take, for example, I'm in product management. One of the things that I obviously do is I follow competitors, right? I'm always looking for, kind of being able to track that information. So I have a good idea of my competitors, or I wouldn't be a good product manager. So I might have my own alerts set up. I've got that figured out. But an expert solution is going to suggest to me, based on the personalization, what it knows about me, did you think about following this company? Or have you looked at this company before, right? So that I'm getting more of something insightful and not just what I've put into it, right? It's going to tell me a little bit more and help me with that discovery side of things, which is more than just finding information. So our second lesson learned is all about taxonomies. And I'm not here to preach taxonomy to you. I think there was a taxonomy boot camp, actually. So there's people here that are going to know it even better than I do, for sure. But what we've learned through this is that kind of taxonomies on their own, it's not just enough, right? Kind of like entity extraction by itself, it certainly helps, but it's not the only thing. Coupling that with knowledge graphs, with ontology graphs, ontology models, and things like that, where now we start to understand and predict intent and what people are actually looking for, and make inferred connections. Now we're taking search to a whole new level. And taxonomies are challenging. So I know one of the things that we do is we come out of the box with a number of taxonomies that are industry specific, with over like 600,000 kind of topics or things that are tied to that. And all of that is about helping find the right information more quickly, right? So having some of that be pre-built, so it's not something that you have to start from scratch with, that's what we've done over the years, and we continue to tune that and work on it. And I think the other piece here is that it's not just about kind of a one and done. Everything is changing. This is a living, breathing thing, right? There's so much new that's coming into your organization. There's new that's happening out in the market. There's new emerging trends, companies, whatever it might be. There's new journals that are being published. There's new research that's being published. So how do we stay up to date? So I think one of the lessons learned is that it's not a set it and forget it, right? It does require some ownership, some curation, pieces like that. So there's organizations like us that can help with that curation if that's not something you can do yourself. But I think that was it might seem like an obvious lesson learned, but it's one of those lessons that you tend to learn the hard way. So just kind of some thought there. And then one of the other things that we were talking about at the booth yesterday is that taxonomies also, we need to start thinking about them not just being text-based, and think about them even more graphically, so that imagery can come into our taxonomies, which is again going to help us with find very specific information. We were kind of talking about a silly example, like imagine who hasn't put together, maybe sometimes younger days, I feel like it's not that long ago that I put together a piece of IKEA furniture, and I ended up with how many extra pieces, kind of laid out at the end, and I look at it and I think, I hope that wasn't structurally important. I hope that, that's not going to impact my ability to sit in a chair and not have it collapse underneath me or whatever. So imagine if you could take a picture of that, upload it into search, and because the way, like IKEA, for example, builds their instructions, it's all image, right? There's no text in it, right? So they don't have to build a million languages. So it's all imagery. So if that could cross-reference that and actually help you understand more quickly if that's structurally sound than having to page through the, all 40 pages of instructions. So then that brings us to the need for it to be contextually, specific. So it's not just starting and paging through things one at a time. So just some different ways to think about things for sure. And then the third one is adapting to human behavior, right? So I think it was said well in the previous session that if we're not, if we didn't grow up or don't have the background that knows exactly how to put the right search string in to get the right results, then we need our learning solution, our enterprise search solution to learn from us and be able to adapt and understand, when I'm typing something in, what that means. Capture those search queries, right, and be able to understand secondary search queries, right, when people go and make those changes. Adapt to the fact that some people type a search string in and others are going to use a UI widget to navigate or use facets to filter down. All of that is basically searching. Right, so being able to capture that and understand it so we can learn from it, have the model adapt and learn from it so that we're, again, getting to more and more faster and better results that ultimately, hopefully, are going to lead to more discovery and not just a single answer. And our fourth one is about enhancing language search with structured data. So we've got tons of unstructured data, right? We've got tons and tons of documents and things like that. And I won't go into too much detail. You can take a look at this later. But the kind of images there are to give you a little compare and contrast of that in the past, we've tried to build these monolithic models of this connects to this, connects to this, connects to this. And that's going to help feed our search queries and things like that so that it knows what's connected. But if you kind of flip that, and instead of trying to make all those connections manually, that we start to group and cluster things and then apply some structured data on top of it, like the taxonomies and ontology and all the things that we just talked about, now the search is kind of doing the work for you and beginning to learn from it. So that's kind of our fourth item. And our last one is about kind of the modular design of things. So being driven by concepts so that we can kind of chunk data down almost to the atomic level, so that when we're searching for things, we can start to understand whether we're searching for an entity or a concept or whatever. So like a really simple example is I go to search for Jack Nicholson, and do I need information about him, the person, and kind of facts about him? Or am I looking for references of all the movies that he's been in? Or am I looking for where he's been a topic in an article or something like that? So by chunking that information down, it lets us get to what we're really looking for more quickly. And another way to think about this, because at EPAM, we use our own solution. So being able to chunk things down, and we even kind of put them into some tiles so that you can consume the data the way you want to, look for what's important to you. So for example, we use it all the time to do research on companies that we're trying to pitch to. And so we have a whole research group that used to take them weeks to kind of pull that together, because they're going to LinkedIn and looking for connections. They're looking for people that used to work there. They're looking at their analyst reports. They're looking at all these different pieces of data. But now they have a much more simple way to do it, and they just kind of plug and play which tiles matter to them. Is it revenue, market share? Is it this? Is it that? And then they're able to combine all that into one single report in a much shorter amount of time, right? It can be amount of hours, day, than taking such a long time to kind of analyze all that information. But you have to be careful as you chunk that information out, because getting a little tile that's trying to reference 30 documents isn't very useful, right? So we've got to think about how people are going to consume that information and make it as easy as possible. So to stay on time, once more with feeling, the 5 lessons that we learned that we hope are helpful for you, like I said, are about expert solutions, not just pages of results. The value of a taxonomy, and really extending that beyond just the typical taxonomy and thinking about knowledge graphs, ontology, and things like that. How we need to adapt to human behavior, right, not fight it. And enhancing language with results with structured data, and then modularizing things so that we can make and customize things and make things more readily available as easy as possible. Thank you.